Let's make sense of the White House executive order on artificial intelligence and the role foreigners play in the American and global technology and startup industry. To help us break it down, today we have Sophie Alcorn. Sophie is exactly who should be talking to these issues. She's the founder and CEO of Alcorn Immigration Law, where she helps tech startups and their founders obtain visas and green cards to live and work legally in the US. She is also the author of, and this is really cool, TechCrunch's Ask Sophie, a weekly immigration column where she answers questions and shares insights on US immigration for tech entrepreneurs and professionals. I'm super excited, but you guys know. But first, welcome this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. There are many. So whether you're totally hyped on AI and you're ready for that robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I don't blame you. I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future. My name is Lindsay. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's make sense of AI, immigration law, and technology. Sophie, welcome. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Lindsay. It's so nice to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited. I think we talked a couple years ago now at this point about having you on my YouTube channel even before Make Sense existed. So I'm glad that we have come full circle and are following through,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, and I really love chatting with you. So I'm really looking forward to today's
Yeah, let's do
conversation.
this. So our first segment, as always, is crystal ball. What does the future hold? So, this is where I call out interesting predictions for this year. Other people made these predictions in December of 2022, and they said, this is what's going to happen in 2023. I want you to tell us your hot take. So, I'm going to fire off some predictions, and Sophie, if you know something about it, say, yes, this is happening. No, it's not happening on this timeline. And if you don't know anything about it, but you think the idea is cool, say, like, I want that to happen. Or if you don't like the idea, you're like, no, please, let's not like make that happen.
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
So we're going to start off with a very unique prediction. It's only shown up on Makes Sense once so far in the first 37 some episodes. So it's that odd. Nations give animals, trees, and rivers the rights of people. So New Zealand granted personhood to a river so it can now sue anyone who pollutes it. Wow.
Wow, I had no idea. It sounds so whimsical, but on the other hand, a corporation is a person under US Supreme Court law. So if a corporation can do it, maybe a river or a rock or a stream. I feel like I'm in Disney's Pocahontas singing Colors of the Wind right now. But yeah, that's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah, so I haven't really researched this one beyond the prediction to see how much of it has come true. But I will say that the only other person that I pitched this one to said the exact same thing you did, which is if corporations can be people, then a river can be a person too,
Yeah, it's a
right?
legal fiction anyway, and it probably has more of a soul in certain cases. So let's go for it.
Yeah, and you know what? To be honest, the river is being could be polluted by mostly corporations, so
True.
we should give it the same legal status to take
Fair
them on.
fight. Yeah.
All right. I'm glad you're a good sport about that one. All right, the next one. Uh, Renewed focus on tracking technologies. So this was primarily in retail and e-commerce, but I imagine across the board uh, this is happening. But improvement on personalization will be a massive win, particularly for retail, but it will be hard to do given data privacy regulations. And this is why I brought it up with you.
Yeah. I'm seeing this more and more. I've met founders doing uh, Internet of Things clothing tracking technology for brand authenticity verification on the blockchain. I'm seeing people do this for food. For origin, is this cheese
Mm.
really Parmigiano Reggiano? Like, what's your, denominazione di origine, or whatever the thing is, right? I'm seeing it more and more. I'm also seeing other types of tracking and surveillance, like government satellites and cameras for both like watching people, and also like predicting when there's going to be a mud flood in a plane, in an area that could jeopardize human settlements, for example. So yeah, lots of tracking. Everybody with tech really loves to track things, and so
Yeah.
then we're like, do we want that or not? I don't know. Lots of tracking going on.
I do. I think as far as the prediction, renewed focus on tracking technologies, that's an easy one to say. Yes, the renewed focus happened in 2023. Um, how much it's like rolled out to the
I feel
public.
like generative AI took the center stage as like the new fad. So yeah.
Yeah, metaverse took a nosedive.
Like
AI took the front stage.
crypto as well, and yeah,
Right,
NFTs
crypto
even
took a
more.
dive as
Metaverse.
well. And there's an episode on Make Sense about that FTX and crypto.
Yeah.
Uh, I do think when I hear about data privacy regulations, really hear about it more in the EU.
We don't have a national data privacy standard in the United States. Different states have been rolling it out at the state level. So like California has something different. A few handful of states are putting forward different laws and regulations, but there's no centralized standard in the United States. And some tech advocates were saying, look, you shouldn't regulate AI until you've figured out privacy first. But the president's executive order on AI came first. So that's where we're at with that
All
right now.
right, we're going to talk about that later. I want to just ask, so I think it's interesting that you say like the different states are taking on data privacy regulation, because I had another guest, Matt Weckel from Neon Wild. He works in immersive digital experiences for children, and there's a ton of lawsuits,
Oh, wow.
like state attorney generals
Yeah.
suing Meta and Instagram, suing TikTok, trying to uh, challenge them on the COPA
Right.
regulation, Children Privacy and Protection Act. Um, and, he also lamented that the federal government, like it's time for them to come in and have an opinion. But it seems like a lot of these things are really driven by the states first.
Yeah. It just depends. And I don't actually know the political reason why we don't have a national standard yet. Um, but where the federal government fails to act on something that it legally has jurisdiction to, then if some of the states that are more concerned about privacy, such as California, they can step in and they can create their own laws on the topic. So, yeah, it makes it confusing, though, I think, for companies that there isn't a single national standard. And I hear that from founders, too. Like, God, even just keeping track of like EU versus US and California privacy standards are like, I'm just going to build in one market. I don't want to deal
Mhm.
with regulations in two markets that are completely different. So seeing that hyper focus and segmentation based on legal compliance as a something that would differentiate your segment your go to market essentially.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Okay. So we'll do one more
Okay.
prediction.
This is fun.
And great. I love it. This is about this one is simple, 3 words: India's tech ascent. So VCs are betting on India in the hope of capitalizing on their startup ecosystems, like next big period of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that in
It happened.
2020, it's happened.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
happened.
check
Yeah.
mark.
Check mark. It happened. In 2022, a number of firms raised massive funds devoted to the region, like Sequoia Capital with a $2 billion India fund. But did we see India continue to expand this year despite the slowdown in
Oh,
funding?
I believe so. I heard this morning, and if this is not fact checked, but I heard that Bangalore now is as big as Silicon Valley for venture capital and startups. Um, and I mean, I don't know. I was there in like 2017, and even at that time, it was so insane, like all the growth and development that was happening there. Like to get from one side of the city to another, people were waiting in traffic 3.5, 4 hours to drive to my talk. And it
Hmm.
blew my mind that we were all in the same city, and that's what the lay of the land was like. So, but I've seen more and more. Um, well, there's many B2B SaaS founders from India that are launching products in the US, or many Indian international students in the US that come here and then go create software for the India market. I see more and more India, US early stage and growth stage VCs specifically sourcing those investments. Um, and there's such a rich technology ecosystem in India. So, yeah, I think it's growing. And then, not even just in software, but also there's been a huge burgeoning and emerging technologies of space tech,
Hmm.
and India, Australia, the US, the UK. There's a lot of commercial space technology startups that are coming out, building hardware, and yeah, seeing that in India as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask because you said something about it's hard for founders following the data privacy in different states and different markets,
Yeah.
and that's why maybe some founders will focus on one market, and they should, as an early stage startup advisor. Yes, they should focus on one market
But
at
you
a
want to boil the ocean, Lindsay.
time.
What? I want the whole world to be my user.
I know. I know. Patience is a virtue and so hard to learn when you are an optimistic entrepreneur with big, bold dreams. So, a lot of the startups I was looking at, I will tell you, I kept putting into Google different ways of like, what are the most famous Indian startups? What are the startups that I should know? And a lot of them were names I really didn't recognize at all. Uh, and
I
I
think they're pretty focused on the Indian market.
That's what I was going to say. So, we're talking business, one business model type or market type is clone markets, right? Taking a successful business model from the US and adapting it to India. So, I think one of the popular ones was Zepto, is a grocery app founded by two Stanford dropouts. So,
There
this
you
is the
go.
convergence of
There you go.
like I looked it up. It pretty much looks like Instacart. You have Indian nationals that, were educated at least for some time at your alma mater in the US, and then went back and took the concept of Instacart and built it out for India.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think we saw this in fintech too, probably also because of the high amount of regulation, but like we're the credit card for blah blah in Indonesia, we're the banking for da 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 in Mexico. And so
payment gateways, stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the technology, but what are they called?
Clone market.
Clone
So
market. Yeah. It's a great business
right.
strategy.
A startup might launch into existing segment
Yeah.
or existing market, then they might launch into a like resegmented market, right? But clone market is really you're taking a business model that's successful in one industry, moving it to another, or in
Mm,
one country and moving it to another. So I did see they have their own ride sharing. Ride sharing like Uber wasn't immediately adopted, or maybe it's possibly still not available in European countries because of the laws,
mm.
and the culture and preferences. So yeah, a lot of it is
Yeah, I
cool.
went to Germany this summer and I wanted to get an Uber and I didn't really know what had been happening there. And the app did work, but I think I was being connected to like local taxi companies as vendors on the platform.
Interesting.
So it was a different user experience for sure
Got
in
it.
the
Got
US.
it. Okay. Well, I know Uber's been advertising, did you know you can take a scooter in Paris? They give these little facts while you're waiting for them to assign you a driver.
Oh,
So
that's fun.
all right. So, going into our second segment, deep dive. In this segment, we get into the details about a specific topic's implications for everyday people. And today we're going to look at what the US government is doing in terms of advancing technology expertise and attracting foreigners. So, this past week, Sophie, you shared on Twitter an article on Politico. Sweeping new Biden order aims to alter the AI landscape. Well, it came out yesterday on October 31st. The Biden administration issued an executive order on AI, which expands on the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need an executive order?
Because
Let's
it's
break it
faster and
down.
they don't have to wait for Congress to vote on things and they don't have to convince the different parties to get along and they can just do
Okay.
what they want.
Okay. Does it have any weight, or like what is
um,
its weight and legal? Does it have any
yeah,
legal implications?
it does. It's legally binding. So, um, different presidents use executive order power in different ways. So, for example, if you remember back to the Trump administration in immigration law, we had the Muslim ban for
Yeah.
several years and
Mhm.
eventually it was thrown out. But that was an executive order. So, a president can literally just use their like emergency powers to sign something and then he's essentially ordering the federal government workers who work for him her to do as they say and do the following and change the like the law, like the
It'd be the
regulatory
same for
laws.
the lockdown too, right? Like the
Yeah.
pandemic lockdown,
Um,
was that an executive
I
order
don't
at
know if
first?
that was an executive order, but there were probably some executive orders at that time.
Or
I'm not
possibly the
exactly sure.
states.
It
The
could have been state
states were
level.
executive.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So whereas Trump was just like he tweeted and he's like, no more Muslims or something, and then he was like, oh crap, I got to make it a law. Oh, I guess I'll sign an executive order. The Biden administration's taken a different approach, so it's like this sweeping thing, and there's like 9 or so immigration provisions, and essentially what they're saying is um, federal government, I direct you to make better rules on XYZ in the next 6 months where it comes to immigration. So we're now going to be waiting for new regulations. So it's I wasn't sure. Like I was really excited last week because I was like, oh my
Okay.
god, this thing is happening. We're
Was it
gonna
a
get
letdown,
immigration
or
any day.
was it
No, I think it's good. It's just we have to be patient because they're doing a more robust legal process so that if people sue, then there's like more weight to stand on to keep the
Mhm.
changes because they're actually like going to publish regulations. They have to go through a notice and comment period to the public, and there's like the
Hmm.
Administrative Procedures Act that dictates how you can do new rulemaking, and so um, it's definitely more robust, but it's slower. So over the next 6 months, we're going to be seeing all of those immigration
That
regulations.
seems like a tight timeline for immigration reform. I know there's a huge, massive backlog,
Yeah,
right, with
yeah, yeah,
immigration,
yeah,
as the government's transition from Trump to Biden and the
yeah,
pandemic
exactly.
set everything back. So I'm like, how are they,
How are they going to
specifically
do
when
it?
it
Well,
comes to employment, it's the H-1B1 visas, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah.
are they really going to be able to like institute new rules and
They've
implement
been
them?
really busy over the last several months. This is actually the third wave of announcements related to immigration updates from the administration, and they just chose to package some of them that are directly related to AI talent in this executive order.
Interesting.
But a couple weeks ago, there was this 227-page thing on H-1Bs and how we need to change the lottery to make it more fair, and how startup founders can access H-1Bs more easily even now without any future changes. So that was really exciting. They issued some J1 guidance for exchange visitors and Fulbright scholars a couple weeks ago. So this is like the third wave of that. And I I hope all of this stuff takes effect before the end of this presidential term. Specifically, some of the highlights are making O1 visas for extraordinary ability and extraordinary ability and national interest green cards that founders can ask for themselves, or just AI professionals could
Hmm.
petition for themselves. So it's like you don't need a job, you don't need to get married. You can just say, hey, I'm going to help America. Please let me in. So they're going to streamline that whole process. They're going to try to make our version of a startup visa, which is called International Entrepreneur Parole, more accessible, which would be great. They're going to try to they're trying to roll out this stateside visa renewal program. So, like right now, if you're an H-1B worker from India and you want to travel, but the visa in your passport expired, you'd have to go make an appointment back in India for a visa interview, or maybe you could try to go to Canada or Jamaica
Right.
or something. But it's a huge pain. So they've been talking about a pilot program for that for certain types of worker visas, H's and L's, but they want to actually expand that now to students and exchange visitors and extraordinary ability people. So that would be
Hmm.
really great. They're trying to make all this adjudications faster for AI professionals, trying to send fewer people back to because there's this huge national security issue, right? Where we're like, oh, yes, come to the United States, world's most brilliant students, pay full tuition at our colleges and universities, get your F1 visas and get educated, get your master's degrees, your PhDs, do your research. And then we're like, oh, yeah, but we don't want you to stay because that's what our immigration laws say. Now go back home. So, like, there's a huge diaspora in China, for example, of people who are educated in the US in advanced emerging technologies and STEM fields,
Hmm.
who literally could not get green cards and left the US after their PhDs and postdocs. And now they're, publishing in China, for example. So as a country, what we've been battling with that really goes beyond political parties is, do we want the next Google, Tesla, and SpaceX for AI or whatever it is to be built in the United States, or do we want it to be built elsewhere? And so a lot of these changes are aimed at actually enabling us as a country to recruit and retain the world's top talent. Like, if I'm not a sports person, so maybe we can think of like a different analogy that I can
I'm a
relate
sports
to.
person, so maybe I can help
Okay, well, I
you.
don't even know if I'm going to
Give it a
use
try.
these words right, but like if you're picking your draft picks for your sports team for the
Right.
professional level, whatever,
Fantasy football.
that one, yes, like I don't know.
Or, the draft for the NFL or
There
any
you
of the big,
go.
yeah.
Like if you own a team in the NFL, do you want to be able to draft the best players, or do you want to just like randomly put them in lotteries and send them to other teams?
So the funny thing is, and I'll try not to take us too far off, but
Okay.
I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. I find sports in the NFL to be like it's a great distraction. Like
Great.
right? And the NFL really wants to expand outside of the United States. And so they do have a game in Germany. I know you have roots in Germany.
Wow.
They do have two games in the UK. They had teams basically like have sister countries. So like the Eagles is
Oh,
like
okay.
attached to Ghana and
Cool.
Australia. But the NFL actually does have a program to bring, I think, Australians into like they
Really?
have programs to on-ramp them into the
Wow.
NFL. And there is someone on our offensive line, Jordan Mailata, who was actually too big of a human being to be play rugby. Like he was so outstanding, but he was way bigger than everyone else he was playing. And the Eagles drafted him.
Oh my
They
goodness.
taught him how to play football. He did not know how to play football. And now he's like one of the best offensive linemen.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so the passion that we care about sports to do exactly what you just mentioned, like we should do that with AI talent. And that's what
right,
we're trying to do
right. And
now.
so unfortunately, it's like on the government to
Right.
do it versus, Google
Private
being able to do it,
industry.
right?
Right. But these tools will allow private industry to better do it and universities to better do it.
Cool.
So, and even nonprofits, there's a bunch in there to help nonprofits help. So, like, even like international students that want to work in social impact, they're going to have more pathways now. So, they're trying to open it up and
Yeah.
things in the
So
national interest.
I was surprised to hear, the kind of TLDR on this executive order was that it expands on the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. But what I'm hearing is there were 9 immigrant provisions
Well, there's
inside
like
that.
100 or 200 provisions in there, and I'm not an AI expert, so I don't know what AI Bill of Rights stuff is going on. But
Okay.
I do know that it was a very convenient time to get more AI talent into the United States through expanded immigration provisions. So
Okay.
they took
Yeah,
advantage.
I read a few. There are like a top 10 list of what you need to know of what's in there. And
I
I
think there's going to
think
be a lot of funding.
definitely privacy,
Yeah.
privacy issues, healthcare, mental health, and other issues there. Uh, uh, Companies are going to be required to publish their test findings. Uh, I would love to read more on that because it sounds like, when the FDA, you have to do trials for drug approvals with the FDA, that you have to do some type of sharing of your testing data.
Yeah, I heard about that as well.
So
Yeah.
we'll have to,
And I
I'll
think
have
the
to,
federal government is being directed to adopt artificial intelligence and its technologies. There's going to be a chief AI officer. So they're definitely trying to build it out. So,
okay. Well, I'm glad about that. Over this year, first year of Make Sense, one of the predictions that I have been popping in is, AI won't replace you right now, but someone that knows how to use AI probably will. And
mm,
so we talk a lot about job replacement. And I think the most cynical view that some people have is like, we've been training AI for years on how to do our
yeah,
jobs, and shortly we'll just be out of them.
yeah.
So I think it's good to have a chief AI officer to kind
Yeah.
of oversee how all of these things are
I,
working.
I think just one comment to what you said, because I heard this about software companies. And I think you could extend the analogy. It's, every company is a technology company. The only difference is some companies know it. So I think every worker is an AI enabled worker. The difference is whether that worker
They,
knows it.
yeah,
So,
exactly, exactly. And I think also the reason with the government to weigh in is and I've talked about it, it makes sense. There's a bunch of copyright issues,
right.
going on, and understanding the data sets that some of these large language models are built upon, particularly if we're going to launch them into like healthcare, right? What kind of data was it trained on? How biased was it? We already know that our studies,
Right.
our medical studies have been biased
Right.
towards like white
Right.
men as mostly participants. So I think I think this is overall good, but there's a lot to
Yeah.
learn.
I went to a fascinating ethics and AI panel workshop a few months ago, and the facilitator's thesis was that every aspect of the organizational and product design needed to include an ethics component from the very beginning. So, if we're building AI, what is the purpose of this technology? What are the ethical implications of the technology? How do we use AI? Where do we get the data from for it? Where did the data come from? How do we design the systems that create the data or access the data? So, just building it in at every single level, um, you can actually, I think her point was, you don't have to shrug your shoulders and give up and just be like, it's too hard, it's impossible, we're not going to try it. It's like, no, you can be deliberate and discerning and build a methodology and execute it, and that can make huge improvements in the quality
Yeah.
of the training data and the
You know what? I appreciate that sentiment and I appreciate that push. It's one of the reasons why I started Make Sense, and I've wanted to do this for a long time. When I was in college as an engineering student, I had to take classes in science, technology, and society, and that was the ethics classes.
mm,
We talked about nanotechnology, whether we want to change the genome of a baby and have designer kids. Like we talked about AI and robots and read all the books, like Isaac Asimov's books, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I in my career working for other startups, it it's been disappointing that there wasn't that thought built into it. And having started my career in San Francisco, and I know you're in the Bay Area, a lot of, one, the early 2000s and the big boom and bust, like the overriding strategy was like, get to market first, right? So no one was thinking about any of the implications of what they were doing. They're just trying to get to the market first. 2000s kind of, web 2.0, social comes about. It's like very, very exciting, but still not really slowing down to think about the implications of this technology. And I like to brag that in 2006, I went to a panel with Mark Zuckerberg of Meta and Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn. And I asked Mark Zuckerberg when he was going to hire social scientists to, like, because
Oh,
Facebook
Lindsay.
was changing the way that we communicate. And he didn't until like 2010, right? And the company at that point was 7 years old. The DNA of it was set, and we can see why it's having so many problems now.
Yeah.
So I like that ethics is being pushed, and I like that the federal government is trying to have a say in that too.
My marketing advice for anybody building a company on this is you don't have to wait for the government regulations to hold you accountable to your
And
own standards of ethics.
right.
And actually, you can really build a brand around ethics, and that might even be more financially powerful than some sort of race to get to market with the
Mm-hmm.
technologies. So I would just encourage people, look, if you can lead on ethical AI embedded in your product and give your customers a sense of privacy and peace of mind, like that's a competitive advantage that people that the right customers are attracted to. And so you can build a lot with that.
I think that's such an important message, and thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great way to wrap up deep dive and just move on to the final segment. Who needs a safety net? In this segment, I ask my guests to share the risks, failures, nay, learning lessons of entrepreneurship and creating their own path into the future. So, Sophie, you started Alcorn Immigration Law in 2015 and are approaching your ninth year
Mm-hmm.
as a founder.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, Lindsay.
What was that? What was your, founder story? How did you get started?
It was so scary. I was a stay-at-home mom. My kids were 1 and 4, and I had been a lawyer already, but I had taken a 4.5 year career break to just focus on being a mom. And my dad, who was an immigration lawyer, passed away unexpectedly, and my marriage wasn't working. And so it was like, how can I stay in Silicon Valley and raise my kids here? And so I had been reading Lean In, and I had been thinking about, like, if I went back to work, what would I do? What if I want to be a founder, but I don't know how to code? Can I still do it? Do I have to go to coding boot camp and create a social network? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. But but then, things just hit a point in my life where I really had to accelerate. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anybody who does immigration law for founders and for early stage and rapidly scaling technology companies. So what if I just create a law firm for that? Because these are my friends. These are like the moms at the park that can't work and their husbands wish they could have startups and they're
Hmm.
immigrants. And like, what if I just help them with really great customer service? And so um, that was like the seed of the idea for the law firm. And we've grown. I have a team of 17 employees. I work for
Wow.
TechCrunch. I have a podcast, the Sophie Alcorn podcast, YouTube. Just published this book, Ask Sophie, the U.S. Founders Guide to Visas and Green Cards, which became a bestseller. So it's really incredible how this like seed of an idea pushing my baby on the swing at the park of like, there's a lot of people who wish they could be founders and they're here, but they're not allowed to be, and their lawyers won't talk to them. Like, could I do
Mm.
it better? Like that's literally where that came from.
Wow. There's so many accomplishments. Maybe you could tell us how the TechCrunch column came
Okay, yeah,
about.
yeah. So let's see. It was about asking. It was about asking.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody at TechCrunch. Uh, I didn't know how to create a brand. One of my friends who was a founder was like, "Hey, they're doing this call for experts. You should sign up. It's like a competition." I was like, "Well, I could maybe get like 2 or 3 people to nominate me." And he was like, "No, you have a list, don't you?" I'm like, "What's a list?" And he's like, "Don't you have like a newsletter?" And I'm like, "No, what's that? No, I don't know how to do that yet." And he's like, "But you've been talking to people?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've done like several thousand consultations at this point." He's like, "Okay, that's your list. You collect the emails, you figure out some sort of mail merge software, and you directly email everybody and ask them to nominate you." So at the end of this, I had, I think, like 72 nominations to TechCrunch. And so the editor called me and he's like, "So obviously you're the expert because you just got 72 nominations out of nowhere." And
Hmm.
then I was just curious and I'm like, "Hey, I am so excited to work with you on this. And do you ever need more content or anything?" Like, I was just doing customer discovery with them on like what is
Hmm.
their gap. And they're like, "Oh, we need high quality articles behind our
Hmm.
paywall that will get people to sign up." And I was like, what if we just tested it? What if I just wrote some articles for you? And then, what if I spoke at Disrupt? And they're like, "Huh, we filled up our speakers long ago." But sure enough, like last minute, like, "Hey, we're testing this thing. Are you still open to speaking?" So that was the first time I got to speak at Disrupt and San Francisco and then Berlin that December in 2019. And then I think I was washing my hair and I was remembering the 1990s dating advice column, Dear Abby, in the newspaper.
Yeah,
And I was like, what if I did that for immigration? Like, that would be so hilarious
I
if I
love
could
it.
get away with that. And I was like, what the heck? I'll just ask. And so I was like, "Hey, what if we did this regularly?" And they're like, "We don't think people would ask you enough questions." I'm like, "Don't worry, I got enough questions."
Hmm.
And I'm like, what if we just time box it? Give me 6 weeks. Let's see if anybody clicks. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No big deal. We can walk away. Um, but it went really well, and the rest is history. So I'm really,
That is
really proud of
amazing.
that.
I love the bold ask part.
Thank you.
Like I think a lot of people stand on the sidelines with things because, like you, they initially think I could ask two or three people,
Yeah.
right? And
We want to expand our imaginations. And
yeah.
one of the thought experiments I've learned to do with myself is, if I wasn't scared, what would I do? Or if I
I love
felt
that.
like an expert, what would I do? Or if I knew that success was guaranteed, what would I do? Or what would be really hilarious if I could get away with? Maybe I could do that. So, but I have to. We're so hardwired, right, to have like, especially the more intelligent and successful you are, you're like, "No, I can't do that. I see all the barriers. Why me? Why would
Mhm.
anybody trust me?" Or whatever. So like literally like, nope, trying on a different
Trying
thinking
to
style
rechange
right
it.
now. How do we do this?
Well, I'm inspired by that thought experiment too. If I knew success was guaranteed, what would I do today? That is amazing, and I'd love to end on that point. So let's make it make sense. There are at least 9 immigration provisions in the executive order on AI, hoping to bring in and attract more talent, keep them here after they go through school. I think there's a lot to look forward to with this, and we'll see what happens at least over the next 6 months, and through Biden's term. So, thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host Lindsay Tavis, and my guest Sophie Alcorn. We hope you enjoyed our take on immigration law and tech and startups. To my listeners, reach out to the Alcorn team for a complimentary consultation to discuss immigration sponsorship solutions to your team. Be sure to mention the Make Sense podcast with me. And Sophie, besides your weekly column on TechCrunch, which social platform would you like people to follow you on?
You can follow me on X and LinkedIn.
All right.
Sophie Alcorn.
Brave, bold move. You're like X jump in. I still call it Twitter.
I know.
So cringy. So As always, you can check out all the links and resources in the show notes. Final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits on YouTube. Hit that subscribe for next week's episode, and for audio only, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Sophie, for joining me.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. It was such fun talking to you. Thank you.
Loved it.